Let's get some insight now to how that governor's race looks going into November.
Sean is with our political analyst tonight, Republican Dick Wadhams, Democrat Mike Dino. Hey, folks.
And boy, we have a lot to talk about. You know, these are not moderates that we have as our nominees here. They have carved out positions to the far left and the far right. What does this say about Colorado, that these are the two nominees that they have picked for governor? Dick?
I think it's a reflection of where the two parties are headed. I mean, both candidates had to go to the kind of the extreme corners of their parties to win their nominations. They both now have a challenge to go beyond the narrow debates of the party nomination process and figure out an agenda that will capture the great middle in the state. And right now, the middle is up for grabs.
It's a small sliver of middle, I think. Mike, yes. What do you think about this?
I think the middle is very narrow, but I think, as we've talked about, money made a big difference. And there were certainly, I think, when we look at the Democratic side, somebody could say there were some moderate or at least one moderate candidate. But you have to be well-funded. It's just like a business, and Jared ran it like he's run his businesses.
Right.
And he was victorious, and I think Walker was able to fund his equally as well and come out ahead.
Right. We got two millionaires, two guys with huge name recognition in this state. So I got to wonder, does the outcome of this election determine whether Colorado is red or blue? Maybe no longer purple, given we don't have moderates anymore. And for, last decade plus, we have had moderate governors.
Yeah, for one, first of all, Jared Polis is not in the same tradition of John Hickenlooper and Roy Romer and Dick Lamb. The days of mainstream Democratic governors are over, I mean, with his nomination, in my opinion. But more importantly, I think Colorado is still a very competitive state. The last two gubernatorial elections, Democrats won. But we elected Republican Attorney General, Republican Treasurer, Republican Secretary of State. The legislature was controlled in the state Senate by Republicans. So winning the governor's race is a big deal, but it doesn't guarantee everything else will follow along below that race.
New era, Mike?
Well, I think it is a new era. We saw with the general election in the presidential race that Hillary Clinton won by 5% here, and what was a lot of people would call a referendum against her. So I think we're trending a little blue. And what I like about Congressman Polis is he represents a part of the state that we haven't seen a gubernatorial candidate come from. Most of our governors of late have represented the Denver metro area before they've made their way to the statewide platform. And so I've heard from officials up north they're really glad to have somebody who understands a little bit more about them and what they stand for. And so I think that'll give Jared some cachet beyond just the urban areas, and particularly the Denver metro area.
And he does have some moderate positions. I shouldn't say they're all to the far left. On trade, for example, he was pro-TPP, pro-fast-tracking that. Stapleton has embraced wholeheartedly President Trump. Should he come and campaign for Stapleton here? Would that be good or bad for Stapleton?
I would probably not bring President Trump to Colorado. For one thing, his approval numbers are not great. But far more important, Sean, Walker Stapleton has got to craft an agenda and drive that thing home. And he doesn't need the President of the United States to do that. He needs to do that himself. And he's got to do it in a stark contrast with Polis. Now, he started tonight, but we need a lot more specificity from Walker as we go into the general election. And he can do that.
Bill Owens would certainly help him in that respect. And it sounds like he'll be doing some campaigning.
Governor Owens, I think, still has a lot of cachet in Colorado, as does Senator Gardner, our great Republican U.S. Senator. And I think they both will be there for the ticket.
Polis, what do you think? Hickenlooper, Bennett?
I think he equally needs their help. I think they bring some credibility in some areas where Jared could use that. But Jared is a very independent person, and certainly self-made in a lot of ways in what he's done on the business side in his life. And so I think we'll continue to see that part of that. And in a lot of ways, Colorado likes folks who can show that they've carried themselves up from the ground and made something of themselves, and certainly he has a lot in that as part of his story.
Right, I'm sure he'll be telling that story. So we're out of time for this segment, but one-word answer. Education, immigration have been the two big issues in the primary. In the general election, what's the big issue? Mike?
I think the economy will be the big issue.
Dick?
Transportation.
All right, we'll see. All right, Karen, Jim, we'll toss back to you.